All right, so today we're going to really get our hands dirty with Novo Nordisk and their 2024 annual report. We're not just skimming the headlines, we're diving deep into the strategy, the numbers, the whole nine yards. We've got sustainability reports, financials, the works, but we're going to make sure you walk away with those key takeaways.
Yeah, we're going to cut through the noise. It's all about connecting the dots. How's Novo Nordisk structured? How are they performing? And what's the plan for the future? Think of it like a roadmap.
Perfect. So let's get right into it. Novo Nordisk is very clear. Their main focus is still diabetes and obesity. They want to stay the leader in these spaces. What's the state of play in those markets right now?
These are their bread and butter, right? And the demand just keeps growing. More people are being diagnosed with diabetes, people are living longer. And with obesity, it's becoming more recognized as a chronic disease, not just a lifestyle issue. So the need for effective treatments is just skyrocketing. And Novo Nordisk, they're right there leading the charge with new innovations. They've got the experience and the market presence to really capitalize on this.
And they're not stopping there. They're also looking at rare diseases and cardiovascular disease. What's the thinking behind branching out like that?
It's a smart move, diversifying their portfolio. Diabetes and obesity are still core, but rare diseases, that's a whole new ballgame. Smaller patient populations, yeah, but often with very high treatment costs. It's a way to target those unmet needs. And cardiovascular disease, well, it just makes sense, right? It's so closely linked to diabetes and obesity. They can leverage their expertise in those areas to develop treatments for heart health, too. It's about treating the whole patient, not just one condition.
And it doesn't stop there. They're dipping their toes into some pretty cutting-edge areas, too, like MASH, chronic kidney disease, even Alzheimer's. What makes these areas so attractive to a company like Novo Nordisk?
Huge potential, massive unmet needs. Take MASH, for instance. It's on the rise, and right now, there are very few treatment options available. Chronic kidney disease, well, it often goes hand in hand with diabetes, so it's a natural fit for Novo Nordisk to tackle those two together. And Alzheimer's, yeah, it's a long shot, but it shows they're thinking long-term. They want to make a real difference in global health, even beyond their current expertise.
Now, one thing that really stood out to me in this report is their emphasis on the Novo Nordisk way. It seems to be more than just a slogan. How does that actually play out in their different business segments?
It's woven into everything they do. Sustainability is a core part of their business model. It's not just about profits, it's about environmental and social impact too. In manufacturing, they're looking at ways to reduce their footprint. In R&D, it's about developing therapies that are both effective and sustainable for the healthcare system as a whole. This thinking influences their interactions with stakeholders, how they approach innovation, everything. And it's working. I mean, their medicines reached over 45 million people last year. That's impact.
And they're putting their money where their mouth is with initiatives like Cities for Better Health and the Childhood Obesity Prevention Initiative. These are all about prevention, right? How does that fit into their growth strategy?
It's a long game, for sure. By investing in prevention, they're trying to tackle the root causes of chronic diseases. Maybe it won't generate revenue right away, but in the long run, it creates a healthier and more sustainable market. It also builds trust with communities and policymakers, which can only benefit them down the line.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about growth. The launch of a weekly, the first once-a-week basal insulin, that's a big deal. What kind of impact do you see that having in their diabetes segment?
It's a game changer for patients. Think about it. No more daily injections. That's a huge burden lifted. It could lead to better adherence, better blood sugar control. And for Novo Nordisk, it gives them a real edge in the market.
And those early results for subcutaneous amycretin in obesity, wow, those were impressive. Significant weight loss. What's the significance of those findings?
Those are exciting results. This drug, it acts on two receptors, the GLP-1 and the amylin receptor. It seems to be much more effective than current treatments. If these results hold up in larger trials, it could be a real game changer in obesity treatment, potentially comparable to weight loss surgery, but without the invasiveness.
Now, in their rare disease pipeline, they're about to submit MIM-8 for hemophilia A to the regulators. That's a big milestone. What does this tell us about their strategy in this segment?
They're serious about rare diseases. Getting a new treatment through regulatory hurdles, especially for a complex condition like hemophilia A, it's not easy. It shows they have the expertise to develop and bring these specialized therapies to market.
They're also moving forward with cagrilintide, a combination of cagrilintide and semaglutide. Why combine these two?
Synergy. Cagrilintide is an amylin analog, helps with appetite control and glucose regulation. Semaglutide, we know that one, it's a GLP-1 receptor agonist. They both work in similar ways, but combining them into one weekly injection, that could lead to even better blood sugar control and weight management for people with type 2 diabetes.
They're really pushing the boundaries with these new approaches. And those early stage projects in type 1 diabetes, like pumpsulin and glucose-sensitive insulin, those are fascinating.
Yeah, those are really pushing the envelope. They're trying to tackle the core issues of type 1 diabetes head on. Pumpsulin, that's all about improving those closed-loop insulin delivery systems.
Yeah.
And glucose-sensitive insulin, imagine that. Insulin that automatically adjusts based on your glucose levels. It's like mimicking the body's natural system.
Yeah.
And then there's the DNA immunotherapy project, trying to actually preserve insulin production in newly diagnosed patients. That's groundbreaking stuff.
And they're not just focused on metabolic diseases. They're also making moves in cardiovascular disease with ziltivekimab. What's the potential there?
Inflammation. That's a key driver of heart disease, especially in people with chronic kidney disease. And this drug, it targets that inflammation. The phase 2 trial shows some promising results. It could significantly reduce heart attacks and strokes in those high-risk patients. This is a huge opportunity for Novo Nordisk to expand into a major therapeutic area with a lot of unmet needs.
They've also got some interesting collaborations going on. The gene editing project for hemophilia A with 2seventy Bio, and then there's etavopivat for sickle cell disease, which is now in phase 3 trials.
This is the future of medicine. Gene editing, genetic therapies, it's about addressing the underlying causes of diseases. And etavopivat, that shows they're not afraid to go beyond their comfort zone and tackle other serious chronic conditions.
So they've got a lot going on, but let's talk about the bottom line. In 2024, their operating profit shot up by 25%, reaching 128,339 million Danish kroner. What drove that impressive performance?
It all comes down to those GLP-1 receptor agonists. Ozempic and Rybelsus, those are their stars. Sales went through the roof, especially in North America and international markets. People want these drugs. They're effective for both diabetes and weight loss. And that translated into huge revenue and profit growth.
And their EBITDA also saw a big jump, up 31.7% to 147,446 million Danish kroner. What does that tell us about the health of their business?
EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a measure of core profitability. And that kind of growth, it tells us their business is running like a well-oiled machine. They're generating tons of revenue, and their expenses are well under control.
Looking at individual products, Ozempic sales surged 26%, reaching 120,342 million Danish kroner. Rybelsus wasn't far behind, up 24%, 23,301 million Danish kroner. What's behind their phenomenal success?
They work, plain and simple. They're clinically proven to lower blood sugar and help people lose weight. And Novo Nordisk has done a great job marketing these drugs, getting them into the hands of doctors and patients. The convenience factor is huge too. Ozempic, once a week. Rybelsus, you just take a pill.
Meanwhile, Victoza sales took a hit, down 37%. Is this just a case of newer, better drugs taking over?
Exactly. Victoza, that was an older GLP-1 drug. You had to inject it daily. The market has moved on. People want those once-a-week options or pills. It's the natural evolution of the market.
They're rare endocrine disorder products. Those saw a nice 30% increase in sales. That shows the potential of their diversification strategy, right?
Absolutely. They're carving out a niche in those rare disease markets. They're developing and selling treatments for conditions that often get overlooked. And it's clearly paying off.
Now, the report also mentioned currency hedging as a factor affecting their profits. Can you explain how that works?
Well, they operate all over the world, right? So their earnings are impacted by changes in exchange rates. Currency hedging, that's a way to protect themselves from those fluctuations. So that's like an insurance policy. It can boost profits if the exchange rates move in their favor, or it can soften the blow if the rates move against them.
So let's talk about how Novo Nordisk rewards their investors. Dividends and share buybacks, those are the main tools. Can you break down their dividend policy for us?
They aim for a competitive payout ratio, meaning they want to distribute a good chunk of their profits to shareholders. For 2023, they paid out a total of 9 kroner and 40 øre per share, which works out to a 50.2% payout ratio. They like to keep things consistent, which investors appreciate.
And for 2024, they've already paid an interim dividend and proposed a final dividend, bringing the total to 11 kroner and 40 øre per share, keeping that same payout ratio. It's all about steady, reliable returns for investors, right?
Exactly. It shows they're committed to sharing their success with shareholders. And the fact that they're increasing the dividend amount, well, that's a reflection of their strong earnings growth.
They're also big on share buybacks. In 2024, they repurchased a whopping 20,181 million Danish kroner worth of their own shares. Why did they do that?
Share buybacks, they can serve a few different purposes. First, they can offset the dilution from employee stock options. When employees exercise those options, it increases the number of shares outstanding, which can lower earnings per share. Buybacks help to counteract that. Second, it's a way to return excess capital to shareholders. If they have cash they don't need for operations or investments, they can buy back shares, which can boost the share price. And Novo Nordisk is very clear that's what they're doing. They're only using excess capital after funding their growth and potential acquisitions.
All right, so taking all of this into account, what's your overall assessment of Novo Nordisk's future?
They're in a strong position. Demand for their GLP-1 drugs is through the roof. But that also presents a challenge, right? They need to ramp up production to keep up with that demand, and they need to do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
Their strategic aspirations for 2025, those are ambitious. They want to dominate the diabetes market and become a major player in obesity care. They're well on their way.
And they're not standing still. They're pushing into cardiovascular disease, rare diseases, even early stage research in areas like type 1 diabetes and Alzheimer's. They're thinking long term.
They are. Their pipeline is diverse. They're not afraid to explore new areas. And their commitment to sustainability, that's impressive. But there are challenges too. Their rapid growth is putting pressure on their environmental footprint. So finding that balance between growth and responsibility, that's going to be key for them moving forward.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Novo Nordisk, here's something to think about. Can they keep up with this incredible demand for their GLP-1 drugs without compromising their sustainability goals? And how will their expansion into new areas shape the future of this company and the healthcare landscape as a whole? It's a fascinating story, and we'll be watching closely. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.